He kept stealing my food. Not by accident, not because he was starving, not because he didn't know better, he just didn't respect me. So one weekend I let him watch me contaminate everything I owned. And by Sunday night, he suggested we divide the fridge. Funny how that works. If you've ever lived with someone who slowly chipped away at your patience one stolen bite at a time, hit that like button. And if you believe some lessons don't require yelling, just strategy, subscribe. Because this story isn't dramatic. It's surgical. Let's get into it. Living with roommates is a social experiment. You don't really know someone until you share a fridge. The place wasn't bad. 2-bedroom apartment, neutral walls, decent rent split. We weren't best friends, but we got along. He was the laid-back type. That kind of laid back. The kind that casually assumes your stuff is community property if it's convenient. The first time I noticed my orange juice was low, I told myself it was nothing. Maybe I drank more than I thought. Maybe I was tired. Maybe I misjudged. The second time, I paused. The third time, I knew. See, there's a specific irritation that comes from being 100% certain you're being disrespected, but not having concrete proof. You stand at the fridge at 7:14 a.m. half awake, staring at a carton that was 3/4 full yesterday and is now mysteriously hovering just above half. You do the math, it doesn't add up. And in that moment, it's not even about the orange juice. It's about boundaries. It's about permission. It's about the silent message that says, what's yours isn't really yours if I want it. I brought it up casually the first time. Hey, have you been drinking my OJ? He didn't even look guilty. Oh, yeah, just a little, I'll replace it. He didn't. A week later, peanut butter. I opened the jar and saw the top scraped unevenly, not how I scoop. I scoop level, precision scoop. This looked chaotic. Again. Hey man, can you not eat my stuff? Dude, it's just peanut butter. Just peanut butter. That's what people say when they want something to sound small. Just this, just that, just chill. But it's never just, it's cumulative. Over weeks it became a pattern. Milk slightly lower, leftovers missing. Pickles disappearing 2 at a time. The worst part, he never asked. He just assumed access. And every time I confronted him, it followed the same formula. Casual deflection. Promise to replace. Light minimization. No actual change. He wasn't aggressive. He wasn't hostile. He was something worse. Comfortably disrespectful. Now here's what most people don't talk about with stuff like this. It's not about the money, it's about the mental taxation. You start labeling food mentally. You start keeping invisible inventory. You start opening containers with dread. Every grocery trip feels like funding someone else's convenience. And when you bring it up too often, you risk being labeled dramatic. So I scaled back confrontation. And I observed. He would open the fridge when he thought I wasn't around. He would hesitate slightly before grabbing something not out of morality, but calculation. If the item looked obviously purchased recently, he'd wait a day or two. He was strategic, just not strategic enough. Now I could have installed mini fridge locks, labeled everything, bought a separate fridge, moved out, but those solutions reward bad behavior. They make me adjust to accommodate his entitlement, and that didn't sit right. I realized something important. He didn't steal my food because he was hungry. He did it because he believed it was low risk. So the objective wasn't to argue. It was to increase the psychological cost, make the risk uncomfortable, embarrassing, contaminated. That's when the idea formed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet and disgusting. Saturday morning, he was home all weekend. Perfect. I woke up with theatrical sluggishness. Sniffling, heavy steps, coughed deliberately in the hallway. Man, I think I'm coming down with something. He barely responded. That was fine. I shuffled into the kitchen, opened my orange juice, and instead of pouring it into a glass, I lifted it, made eye contact, and drank straight from the container, not a quick sip, a long, committed, audible gulp. Then I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand and put it back in the fridge. Slowly. He watched. There was a micro-expression, discomfort, but he said nothing. That afternoon, I escalated. Pickle jar, opened it, reached in, grabbed a pickle barehanded. A little juice dripped over the rim. I didn't wipe it. Instead, I slowly ran my tongue across the rim, like it was an accident, then sealed it and placed it back. His face tightened. Still nothing. Good. Silence meant it was working. Sunday morning, he was making coffee. I came in with exaggerated tiredness, sniffling louder, opened the peanut butter, stuck my bare finger in, scooped, licked my finger mid-motion. went back in for a second scoop, closed it, then cream cheese, finger again, spread it on the bagel unevenly, coughed lightly, rubbed my nose with my hand, touched the fridge handle. It wasn't about hygiene. It was about perceived contamination. Humans can handle unfairness. They cannot handle disgust. Disgust overrides entitlement. And I knew he was watching. Every move calculated, every choice deliberate. The fridge had become a stage, and I was performing. Sunday evening, he cracked. He stood in the kitchen doorway while I poured a bowl of cereal from the carton. Do you always handle your food like that? There it was, not accusation, concern, discomfort, the fear of ingestion. I didn't even look at him. Handle it like what? You know, drinking straight from containers. Using your hands shrug. I mean, it's my food. I don't see the point in dirtying utensils when I'm the only one eating it. Silence. You could almost hear his brain reprocessing the last several weeks. Replaying, recalculating, he swallowed. Oh, that tiny word carried so much. Because now, the cost-benefit ratio had shifted. The risk wasn't me being annoyed. The risk was ingesting my fake weekend illness and finger-handled dairy. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I didn't accuse. I just made my boundaries biologically uncomfortable. That night, he suggested something, out of nowhere. Hey, maybe we should have our own shelves, like top shelf for you, bottom shelf for me, so there's no confusion. Confusion, I almost laughed, but I stayed neutral. Sure, that works, and just like that, it stopped. No confrontation, no drama, no damaged property, just psychological conditioning. The fridge felt different the next morning. Same hum, same faint click when the compressor kicked on, same faint light flickering on when the door opened. But the energy, completely different. There's something fascinating about power when it shifts quietly. For weeks, I had been reacting, monitoring, adjusting. Now he was. Monday morning, I opened the fridge casually. His food untouched. My orange juice exactly where I left it. Not a drop missing. I could almost see the invisible force field around my shelf. A barrier not built with plastic or labels but with discomfort. And what made it satisfying wasn't that I had won. It was that I hadn't argued my way there. I hadn't begged. I hadn't nagged. I hadn't escalated. I had simply changed the psychological environment. And humans adapt very quickly when disgust is involved. Let's talk about something important here. People will tolerate unfairness. They'll tolerate tension. They'll tolerate confrontation. But they will not tolerate contamination anxiety. Disgust is primal. It's older than manners, older than social rules, older than logic. When he thought he was just taking some OJ, he framed it as harmless. But when that OJ became something that had touched my mouth during a cold, that harmless narrative shattered. Because now the question wasn't, will he get mad? It was, what did I just ingest? And that's powerful, because you can argue against someone's anger. You cannot argue against your own imagination. I didn't immediately stop the behavior, by the way. That's important. For 2 more weeks, I continued casually drinking from containers but less dramatically. Just enough to reinforce the narrative. Pick up milk. Sip. Return it. Open salsa. Dip a chip directly. Close lid. Nothing extreme anymore. Just consistent enough to maintain the uncertainty. And every time I did it, he would glance. A split-second hesitation. A subtle tightening of his jaw. Sometimes he'd wipe his hands on his jeans as if imagining invisible germs. He never touched my shelf again. But more interestingly, he started keeping his own food more carefully, labeling leftovers, sealing containers tighter, avoiding cross-contact. It was fascinating to watch. The man who previously treated the fridge as a communal buffet now treated it like a biohazard containment unit. About 3 weeks later, he casually brought it up again. Not accusing, just curious. Hey, out of curiosity, were you actually sick that weekend? I almost smiled. Little bit. Why? He hesitated. Oh, nothing, just wondering. But what he meant was, did I eat infected dairy? Did I drink contaminated juice? Was that sniffle real? The beauty, he'll never know. And that uncertainty is what permanently closed the case. Here's something important. I didn't ruin his food. I didn't damage his property. I didn't poison anything. I didn't lie beyond exaggerating mild sniffles. I simply removed the illusion of safety. And that's what made it proportionate. If someone takes from you because they assume access, you don't have to scream to correct them. Sometimes you just alter the perceived cost. Because people who operate on convenience will instantly change behavior when inconvenience outweighs benefit. On the surface, it's about orange juice. But deeper, It's about boundaries in shared spaces. When you live with someone, there's an unspoken contract: respect what isn't yours. When that contract is violated repeatedly, you start to feel smaller, less prioritized, less respected. And that feeling builds. It seeps into how you walk into your own kitchen, how you open your own fridge, how you buy your own groceries. Tiny violations accumulate like interest. And that's why the resolution felt so satisfying, because it wasn't about punishing him. It was about restoring equilibrium. After we divided shelves officially, the apartment changed in small ways. He asked before borrowing things, actually asked. Hey, can I use some butter? Mind if I grab an egg? Polite, measured, cautious. The dynamic flipped, and I never once brought up the previous arguments again. No told you so. No lecture about boundaries, no moral speech, just peace. You'd be amazed how quickly behavior changes when respect becomes cheaper than risk. The real satisfaction came at random moments. Standing in front of a full container of OJ 3 days after buying it, opening peanut butter and seeing the surface untouched. Knowing I didn't have to second-guess inventory. That quiet relief, that's what revenge should feel like. Not explosive, not dramatic, just a deep exhale. Control restored, peace reestablished. You don't always need fireworks. Sometimes justice hums quietly in the refrigerator.
If you like stories where people finally get what they deserve, click the playlist on screen and binge the rest.